Blessed Lent to you all. Today we are diving into Lent with a kind of a different theme than we would normally have in Lenten times. It's called Created for Community. And when I found this resource through the ELCA's website, it felt like it was just exactly the right time for us to do this kind of study. And so I hope that this is meaningful for us, and it diverges pretty significantly from the usual Lenten stories and lectionary readings, placing a special emphasis on our interconnected relationship with creation, with all the saints who've gone before, with our neighbors, with those on the margins, and with Christ himself. So typically we start with Lent with the story of Jesus in the wilderness, right? Yes, are you with me? Okay, good. And you're in the wilderness, and Jesus is out there among the wild beasts, right, in the story, and is tempted by the devil. And the mentioning of those details, I think, in that story, in particular the wilderness and the wild beasts, is important. While we often think of community as limited to human beings, our human existence is very much interdependent with the created world. This theme is especially apparent in this reading we had today about the storm, right? The account of the fishermen whose lives depend on the sea and fishing, but who become afraid of its power in the storm. You know, I think this story of the storm always resonates with a deeper tone in this particular community, in Ballard in particular, as so many of our friends and family are tied to the sea here. How many fishermen can you think of off the top of your head, right? Just all of them. And there we have the fishing community, there's the Navy that's right here, we have the pleasure boating community of which many of us are a part, and there's the amazing joy of just being at the beach that is part of the central core of living in the Pacific Northwest. My little family is ocean adjacent. As Midwestern transplants, the fraught nature of the salty seas is still relatively new to us. We're constantly learning about how different that is. But we've also greatly enjoyed how those who have shared their boats and their catch with us. I remember when the Soames took us out crabbing for the first time, and we had to whap the crabs with a stick, and I was like, what is this chaos that we are doing right now? They're in a cage. It was amazing. People have shared with us their clamming wisdom. The Cloths taught us how to use a clam gun when we were on the Earth Care retreat when we first moved here. And I've learned that beach naturalist knowledge is kind of a wealth in the folks around here. And so I've learned all about the different creatures that live in the low tide pools and how fascinating and interdependent they are on all of the different ecosystems. Visiting the ocean has been healing in my soul, and it's calming in a way that I had not experienced before we moved out west. I've always loved water, and like I said, my dad taught me how to swim when I was 3 by literally just sort of pitching me in. Granted, there was somebody out there at the other end, but that was how I learned. And we swam and we fished in freshwater lakes, and even big ones like Lake Michigan, right? But the ocean is something else altogether transcendent. Last spring, we were camping out on the south coast of Washington and happened to be there when the rescue helicopters and the boats were all practicing and preparing out by Cape Disappointment in high seas. And I had never seen such a thing. And it was really sobering to watch these boats, big boats, right, disappear below you could see them out there. They would just go under and then come back up again. And there's helicopters just hovering in these winds, and it was amazing. It was really, really disconcerting to watch while we were just kind of there strolling on the beach, looking for sea glass and sand dollars, and whatever. For those who rely on the sea for their living, especially for those who do so in the turbulent seas of Alaska, the reality of the sea's abundance is always carried with a sharp awareness of the sea's deadliness. And that's an interesting thing to learn if you haven't been raised in it. In seminary, I was taught that water in the Bible symbolizes many things, right? It happens, there's a lot of it. But most often in the Bible, water is the chaos monster of death. Weird, but that's exactly how it's described. It's this chaos monster of death. Like Moses is left in the reeds, in the water. That's death. Noah and the flood. Death. Jonah and the whale. Death. Even our baptisms are death. We often talk about baptism being a washing, and that's nice, but the word in Greek is much stronger, and it means drowning. It's really what it means. We die to our past selves in the drowning of a baptism and come up out of the water to new life in Christ. It has a death in it. Water is complicated, right? It's absolutely necessary for life. How many days can you go without water before you die? 3. You can go like 8 to 18 without food, but water, 3. But water, so it's life-giving, it's life-sustaining, but it also can kill you in the blink of an eye. It's an interesting place to have ourselves have all these meanings, right? The Bible story today has more questions for me than answers in it. As Weller said to me when I was reading it to him, trying to get ideas for this sermon, thank you to the 8-year-old for helping, right? Why didn't they just all go back to shore? What did they normally do during a storm if Jesus wasn't in the boat? To which I said that those questions are extra biblical, and I'm not an expert on what Palestinian fishermen did in the time of Christ when Jesus wasn't in the boat. Sorry. But in this story, Jesus is in the boat. And if anyone can do it, Jesus can conquer death and the chaos monster in the storms that rage. I believe, just like I was telling the kids, that this means that Jesus is present for us in our boat today and every day. On the pleasure cruises, when the storms turn into chaos monsters, either which way. Much like the disciples, we may find ourselves freaking out and thinking that this is it, this is the end, and Jesus is just sleeping in the stern, watching us die. Anyone felt that recently? Yeah. But the disciples, and I believe this is key, they called out their need. What did they say? They said, hey, we're dying over here. Don't you care? And Jesus was moved. Jesus says to us, even today in these storms that we're facing, peace, be still. This boat of a church, do you know why they call this the nave of the church? Because it's like the same root as the word naval, like a naval vessel. And it's supposed to look like an upside-down boat. Who knew? Anyway, this boat of a church that we are in, this community, this congregation is heading out into the sea of the transition process. Sans, our senior captain. And while we can pray for a glassy day on the water, the storms are going to come as we move through this time. And the best thing we can do is to remember that Jesus is indeed in our boat. And we have to have the voice to be able to say, hey, Jesus, can you lend us a hand, please? We are not alone. We may be sad, but we're not bereft. We are together here in this boat. And we are gifted with relationships to each other and to God, and we're going to be all right. Okay.